Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Bernanke, I think Chairman Frank mentioned the deficit in passing and the debt, and that's what I want to ask you about. Really, that's, to me, the elephant in the room. We have our debt is going to double in the next 5 years, triple in the next 10 years, and it's fueled by historic deficits. I heard this morning on TV that we're having many cases across the United States this year of children and even adults that are kind of walking out on the thin ice, and they walk out maybe day after day and they get some comfort that nothing happens. But thin ice is dangerous, and I submit that this type of budget path is dangerous, and the deficits we're running are dangerous. And I would ask you, number one, I don't believe that our present budget path is sustainable. So my first question to you is our budget path sustainable? And second, is there a need for what I would consider an urgent need for the Congress? And you said it's up to the Congress, but for the Congress to come up with a concrete plan to change that budget path. And do you believe there's an urgency in that?
Congressman, when you ask about sustainability, you're talking about the medium-term structural deficit that remains even after the economy has returned close to more normal levels of activity. Estimates of the structural deficit range from 4% by the OMB to up to 7% of GDP in some scenarios run by the CBO. Those numbers are above a sustainable level. I think in order to maintain a stable ratio of debt to GDP, you need to have a deficit that's 2.5%, 3% at the most. So I think, yes, under current projections, we have a deficit and a debt that will continue to grow, interest rate costs that will continue to grow. So I do think it's very important that we begin to look at the path, the trajectory of the deficit as it goes forward. And there could be a bonus there to the extent that we can achieve credible plans to reduce medium to long-term deficits. We'll actually have more flexibility in the short term if we want to take other kinds of actions.
Right. So the current budget path is not sustainable, is it?
Given the numbers that the CBO and the OMB have projected, that's right.
That's right. And it may be upon us sooner than we think. Is that a good analogy that I've used of walking on thin ice?
Yes, sir, that's true. It's not necessarily just a long-term issue, because it is possible that bond markets will become worried about the sustainability, and we may find ourselves facing higher interest rates even today, given that concern.
So is it critical that we have a long-term plan, and we have it now to reduce?
Yes, I think it's very important that Congress, I realize it's extremely difficult. I don't underestimate in any way how difficult it is. And it's also difficult to address issues which are still a few years away. I understand that as well. But it would be very helpful, even to the current recovery, to markets' confidence, if there were a sustainable, credible plan for a fiscal exit, if you will.
And, you know, if we don't address them now, I'm not sure we can address them, in a effective way 2 or 3 years from now, or 4 or 5 years.
It'll become increasingly difficult because the cuts that you'll need to make will be even sharper, or the tax increases even sharper.
I very much appreciate your testimony, and I do believe that you've addressed many of the concerns, and I'm happy that you mentioned that the sterile reserve legislation that we passed in a bipartisan way has been an important tool and will. Thank you.
The gentleman from North